Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to episode number 180 in the book of Genesis. Today is about a 20% tax rate that Joseph is going to impose upon the Egyptians. Listen to this. This is from Genesis chapter 47. We're going to start in verse 13. So now there is no food in all the land. 7 years of plenty, 7 years of famine. We're at least into the middle portion of that famine time. For the famine was very severe, so that the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan languished by reason of the famine. And Joseph gathered up all the money that was found in the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan in exchange for the grain that they bought. Joseph brought the money into Pharaoh's house. So step one is to sell the stored grain for basically all the money in the known world and all the money known in the Egyptian world. That's step one. And when all the money was spent in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan, and all the Egyptians came to Joseph and said, "Give us food. Why should we die before your eyes? Our money is gone." And Joseph answered, "Give your livestock, and I will give you food in exchange for your livestock if your money is gone." So they brought their livestock to Joseph, and Joseph gave them food in exchange for the horses, the flocks, the herds, and the donkeys. He supplied them with food in exchange for their livestock that year. So now this takes a whole year of the famine to do that paragraph. So step two is to sell the stored grain for all the livestock in the world. So Joseph is getting Pharaoh all the money in the world and all the livestock in the world. Verse 18. And when that year was ended, they came to him the following year and said to him, "We will not hide from you, from my lord, small l, that our money is all spent. The herds and the livestock are my lord's, small l. There is nothing left in the sight of my lord, small l, but our bodies and our land. Why should we die before your eyes, both we and our land? Buy us and our land for food, and we, with our land, will be servants to Pharaoh." Servants, willing people that work for Pharaoh. "And give us seed that we may live and not die, and that the land may not be desolate." So Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh, for all the Egyptians sold their fields because the famine was so severe on them. The land became Pharaoh's. As for the people, he made servants of them from one end of Egypt to the other. Only the land of the priests he did not buy, for the priests had a fixed allowance from Pharaoh and lived on the allowance that Pharaoh gave them. Therefore they did not sell their land. Then Joseph said to his people, "Behold, I have this day bought you and your land for Pharaoh." So step three now is to sell all the stored grain for all the people and all the land in the world. Now, of interest, the people are willing sellers of themselves to Pharaoh. So they prefer it to death, so I don't know how much of a choice it was, but all Egyptians are now owned and operated by Pharaoh. So slaves are people that work for someone against their will. Servants are willing to work for another with their will, and they are described here as servants, not slaves. Now, when Israel gets the attention of Pharaoh a couple hundred years later, they're described as slaves. Okay, so now for the taxation, now for step four. "Now here is seed for you, and you shall sow the land. And at the harvests you shall give a fifth to Pharaoh, and your 4/4 shall be your own, as seed for the field, and as food for yourselves and your household, and as food for your little ones." And they said, "You have saved our lives. May it please my Lord, we will be servants to Pharaoh." So Joseph made it a statute concerning the land of Egypt, and it stands to this day, that Pharaoh should have a fifth, there's the 20% tax, and the land of the priests alone did not become Pharaoh's. So step four is to supply seed for those who are willing to work and live and continue to be workers and save their households and save their families and save their little ones. Step five is to establish a fair taxation. So that was 20%. You keep 4/5 of your labor for seed and for food, and Pharaoh gets one-fifth for the ongoing supply and sustenance of the people in the country. So of note, we also note how the people respond to this, and they're excited about this. They say, "You've saved us. This must have been a super terrible famine." So at the end of this famine, Pharaoh possesses all the land, most of the money, except the money that's currently being earned, all the people, and all the animals of Egypt. And it's an incredible concentration of ownership and power into this system of leadership. And we'll see how eventually how a government is going to use that power as time goes on. So it sets up the next book of the Bible, I think, Exodus, which is about 200 years later. The people of Israel apparently kept their distinctiveness within the land of Egypt, and I think might have been preserved from this uh, ongoing famine because they lived in the Nile Delta, the only river in Egypt that doesn't go dry. And perhaps they're prospering in Goshen, off the radar, on the best land. And they also have the most in-demand job in all of Egypt, which is shepherds and herdsmen, because now Pharaoh owns all the cattle and all the sheep. So I wonder if they are exempt from this servitude. All right, so like 200 years later, when we go to the book of Exodus, there arises a new king in Egypt. He doesn't know Joseph, and he says, hey, the people of Israel are too many and too mighty, and we got to deal shrewdly with them and put them into slavery. And he sets taskmasters over them and afflicts them with heavy burdens. So he did that because the people of Egypt were in dread of the people of Israel, even though they lived in the same country. So they ruthlessly made the Israelites work as slaves. That's all in Exodus chapter 1. So I think that this famine distinguishes Israel from Egypt. Why Israel is prospering and growing and making millions of people out of the 72 people that started there. Egypt continues to suffer from the famine. Thanks for listening. We ended up with a 20% tax rate given by Joseph. Something to think about. Thanks for listening.